Welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash. This is HeroQuest, and we are looking at a plain, boring background today because I have finally acquired HeroQuest First Light, the game system new edition that should be exclusively at Target, and perhaps that exclusivity will open up over time. But that's where I acquired this particular item, and I've already took it out of its plastic packaging, keeping the sticker advertising the detailed dragon miniature that the game features. For anyone who needs to know, this game box is the exact same size as a large box expansion, so it will fit in whatever storage solution you currently have going on for those. Also, for anyone wondering, this has content in it that can act as an expansion to your existing HeroQuest collection if you're a veteran, if you've been around since the 2021 re-release, if you've been around since the 1990s with your classical release. You can use the dragon miniature, dragon card, game board, and campaign book combined with all of your existing assets to play a brand new campaign. And yes, the campaign is in the Zargon app, the HeroQuest app that allows you to play an immersive game of HeroQuest with your friends without having to have a Zargon player. There are marked differences between this artwork and the version that was going to come to retail prior. Notably, this doesn't reek of AI slop art. That was a point of contention for a lot of would-be buyers, especially when Hasbro doubled down, defending the artwork by saying it wasn't AI generated and decided to reveal the name of the artist. This artwork is much more believably handcrafted in that it is not overly detailed in places, and there is a realistic blur effect, so we're getting closer and closer to the day and age where pretty much anything could be AI generated, so question everything, I suppose, but I would believe that this was handcrafted. HeroQuest, as a game system and without any prior releases owned, will play out of the box just with this, and if you so choose, with the Zargon app, which is free, of course, on Google Play. If you only have enough money to get one HeroQuest product at all, and you are a complete and total newcomer to the entire game system, the entire franchise, the entire brand, well, get this if you can't afford the original larger box game system. Now, there are some very distinct differences between this game system and that one. And I'm not just talking about the included campaign book, which is totally different than the one that comes with the first edition of the game system. I should say all other editions of the game system. But before we get into that, we'll take a look at the box, show off the barcode for anybody who might need that, just in case you thought the New Zealand and Australia consumer service hotlines weren't there. They are. All of the sides of the box feature identifiable graphics, and then the back of the box reveals our new hero sculpts. That's right, this comes with the wizard, the elf, the dwarf, and the barbarian in yet new sculpts. These are not the mythic tier alternate gender sculpts. These are not the 2021 HeroQuest sculpts. These aren't even tributes of the 1989 HeroQuest sculpts. These are 4 brand new versions of these characters. And we have our dragon, of course. We have the contents, everything that comes with this game, a generous description of the companion app, which I did not mention is also available on the App Store, and the declaration that this is a standalone game with 10 unique quests and a complete game system compatible with all HeroQuest expansion packs. That's right, if you get this game and then decide to get an expansion pack such as Jungles of Delthrak, they would be completely, perfectly compatible in all ways, except for maybe one, and that's visually. And again, we'll get into that in just a moment. And so typically the scroll that allows us to get a glimpse into the lore of the particular expansion pack on which it is presented, this time has the difficult burden of reintroducing the entire concept. Heed well my word, for I am Mentor, Wizard of the Realm. HeroQuest is a fantasy adventure game that follows 4 heroes through dungeon quests as they discover treasure, explore immersive environments, and battle evil forces controlled by Zargon, the Game Master. Traverse an ever-changing board that evolves as you trek through each dungeon. Will you prove yourself worthy of the title of hero? The quest is calling. If you haven't noticed by now, the miniatures presented on the back of the box of the heroes are the only 3D miniatures that are included with this game system. Well, those and of course, obviously the dragon. Everything else presented, from furniture to monsters to doors opened and closed, is going to be represented by a standee. And that's exactly what we're going to get ready to look at now as we open the box. I long for the days when game publishers put helpful assembly information on the underside of the box lid. But our detailed dragon miniature comes pre-assembled. Why do you rob me of this privilege? The presentation so far is wonderful. We have a pad of character sheets, and these will act as a lovely backup source of character sheets should we run out if we already have a game system. The pad is noticeably thinner, and it's a realistic amount of sheets here. I don't see me going through this whole pad. I still haven't finished going through the pad that I already have or the pad that came with the Frozen Horror. Our First Light quest book looks different than other quest books. The format is a little bit different. The graphical standards, the design convention that they've used up to this point is abandoned, except for the size of it is a typical 6x9 sized HeroQuest book, but it differs in that we don't have the gold border. The logo's a bit more shrunk down. However, none of that matters. This is still a quest book. And this quest book is special because this quest campaign was designed by Stephen Baker. The back of our quest book has some interesting art of the dragon, to say the least, as well as a note to parents to scan the QR code to download the HeroQuest companion app. I'll call my dad and let him know about the QR code, but I doubt his phone supports scanning QR codes, and he probably doesn't know what they mean anyway. The quest book comes with an alchemy reference, which is not intended to be purchased between quests. This is just for reference only, as well as the lore of the SeerScale lineage. Alright, so I want to make abundantly clear, if you're new to HeroQuest and you're watching this video, this is a standalone product in that you can purchase it and play it all by itself with no other components. Buy this game at Target, sit down and have family night, or pour yourself some mead and have some solo gaming time while you listen to my audio in the background. But as a product that is commercialized, this is supposed to appeal to as many people as possible. And so for all of the people who already have HeroQuest, especially the game system, which, who's going to have HeroQuest expansions and not the game system, right? This particular lore bit explains kind of why this campaign exists, why there are 4 heroes in this game of First Light, and also 4 heroes in the other editions, the other game systems. And I say game systems because I'm kind of throwing back to the 89/92 version of HeroQuest, but also the first edition of the new edition of HeroQuest, which came out in 2021, has a second edition that comes in a slightly smaller box, but for all intents and purposes, it is the exact same thing, with the exact same contents. I would like to read the SeerScale lineage lore. This is for Zargon's eyes only, but I kind of don't see the point of keeping this lore hidden from the heroes. I would be more than happy to read the heroes these passages at my table to begin the game. Although we do have our typical message from Mentor, which I'd like to read as well. So I'll save these for the end of the video so you don't have to skip around, and I will be reading the SeerScale lineage as well as the message from Mentor at the end. But skipping past the lore bit, we have the contents here covered in their entirety by these 2 pages. And we have a new section on blessings, curses, and treasure. There are various effects that may be bestowed on the heroes as they take on the quests. If a hero receives one, instruct them to mark it on their character sheet. For those of you who have been playing the quests in the HeroQuest app, none of this will be new. You'll already be privy to it. But First Light comes with the Oracle's Blessing mechanic. Use this ability to divine the future. Ask Zargon to lay out a room beyond an adjacent closed door, or after you roll for attack, defend, or movement dice, you may re-roll all dice. You must keep the second result. After you use this ability, it disappears. And the Oracle's Curse. Place the Mark of Zargon tile on your character sheet. Once per quest, Zargon may take the token from you and force you to re-roll all dice in a roll. Zargon then decides whether to use the new roll or keep the previous, so Zargon gets to decide the re-roll choice. That's a first, and it's actually quite dangerous if you think about it, because if you push your luck with a second roll, you could actually roll worse unless you are choosing to only re-roll if you have the absolute objectively worst result when you roll the first time. But Zargon gets to choose. Replace the Zargon token on your character sheet at the start of each quest. This curse can be removed if you donate 800 gold coins to charities providing care to injured civilians of the realm. which you may do between quests while visiting the armory. So we have a new in-between quest mechanic as well, wherein your hero donates coins. Now, this doesn't say that the hero has to donate all 800 at the same time, and I think that that's rules as intended, not having to donate all at once. It's nice that it gives your heroes a new reason to use their gold, because this could be a really crappy thing to have on your character. The Glyph Key Scroll. Use this scroll at any time to destroy a discovered magical glyph, no action required. This scroll has no effect on magical glyphs disturbed by looting. After you use the scroll, it disappears. The Hearthkin Horn. Use an action to blow this horn. Each hero places a skeleton on any square in their same room or corridor. Each hero controls their own skeleton, and the skeletons move after their designated hero's turn. So we have skeleton mercenaries, basically called the Hearthkin. Hearthkin skeletons roll white shields to defend from hits. At the end of the quest, they return to their resting place. They have movement of 8, 2 attack, 2 defend, and 1 body point. After you use this horn, it crumbles to dust and disappears. An amazing item that actually benefits all 4 heroes. Playing the quests. Starting and ending quests. The heroes do not always start and end their quests on the spiral stairway. We know that. Large monsters. When a monster takes up 2 squares, that monster can attack any creature on the surrounding 10 squares. And that's a holdover rule from previous expansions, so it still works here. We have clarifications on casting spells on monsters that do not have mind points, unthreatened movement, which is now part of the base game system rules. So instead of rolling 2 dice for movement, the hero may simply move 8 squares, up to 8 squares, if there are no monsters on the board. Zargons, make sure your heroes actually go through and step on the squares in their path so you can chart whether or not they have stepped on a trap. Item exchange. A hero can pass a potion, artifact, weapon, or any other item or piece of equipment to another hero if adjacent to that hero, and if neither hero is adjacent to a monster. The game board has 2 sides, which we will be looking at here shortly. Look at the quest map layout to know which side to use for each quest. And then additional mechanics for furniture, the Healing Hearth. When a hero would draw a treasure card in a room containing a fireplace, they may instead heal 1 body point. And Sly Storage. The first hero to draw a treasure card in a room containing a cupboard instead draws 2 treasure cards. Resolve the cards in the order drawn. So very interesting additional rules, not necessarily changes in any subtractive way to our game system. Qwindrak the Warlock. Each time the heroes encountered Qwindrak, the Warlock assumes 1 or more distinct creature forms called synchroforms. While in synchroform, Qwindrak uses the listed statistics for that creature. He's always able to cast the spells available to him, regardless of his form. When the heroes defeat his synchroform creature, remove that miniature from the board. Any spell active on Qwindrak ends. Look to the quest notes to know what happens next. Qwindrak may transform into a new synchroform, take on his true warlock appearance, or escape. Qwindrak is a warlock that can become a dragon. However, Qwindrak has yet to master his dragon form. In each quest, see the quest notes to know how many skull tiles to place beneath his miniature. These tiles mark how many body points the dragon is missing. And has draconic flight. The dragon may take partial movement, perform an action, and then finish its movement. The dragon's powerful wings allow it to move through squares occupied by heroes and monsters, though it cannot end its movement on an occupied square. And now, a section that I really appreciate called Tips for Zargon. We recommend reading through the quest notes and studying the map before starting a quest. Read a message from Mentor on page 8 before jumping into Quest 1, the border fort of In-Gulden. When you see quotations in the quest notes, read the text inside the quotation marks aloud to players. Keep in mind that you're the game master of this journey. This is your realm to dictate as you please. Feel free to adapt and change quests to make the most fun challenge possible for your heroes. We have our quest map guide with our classic monster symbols. In addition, now also a dragon. And then we're going to be looking at the very first quest, and we'll look at the second quest as well. So spoilers ahead, we're just going to be glancing through these really though. We're not going to be studying them in any sort of great detail. We'll look at the quest notes and we'll look at the map and we'll look at some of the locations and what the correspondences are between the notes and the map image on the first 2 quests. So the very first quest, the one that this new campaign kicks off with, is the border fort of In-Gulden. And this is our quest that is going to essentially replace the trial as the very first quest that we play as new HeroQuest players. Dark shaded areas on all quest maps are considered solid rock. You'll find the skull tiles on this map in the part sheet. Each skull tile represents one of Ragnar's fallen scouts. So here we are using skull tiles for symbols of entities on the board. And the flavor text or introduction text of Quest 1 reads, as follows. You enter the war room to the sounds of gruff, concerned murmurs and loud protests alike. "Wrong!" booms a voice that we must position the bulk of our forces here. As you turn the corner, you see an imposing figure jam a large, calloused index finger into the map, splayed across the table. If it is in fact victory we're after. The corner of Mentor's mouth curves upward. He seems cautiously amused by the warrior's diatribe. "If I may interject," Mentor speaks up, announcing his presence. "This, my friends, is Sir Ragnar." "Mentor," Ragnar grumbles. "I can smell that old book from here. Have you brought my reinforcements?" Ragnar turns his attention to you. "Heroes, welcome." He claps his hands together loudly. "There's no time to waste. My scouts were sent to the ruined border fort at In-Gulden, and I've not heard from them since. You must journey there immediately and locate my missing scouts." I had the privilege of playing this quest in the app about a month or so ago, when the app did its accidental update that allowed all quests to be played. And it has a very interesting flow. You have multiple paths to get to your objective room. You have a lot of gold that you can find, potentially, and you can even find a wizard's staff. And you have 1 or 2 secret rooms that you won't find if you're in a hurry not looking for secret doors. The second quest, which is called the Warlock of 12 Vor, shows that we are indeed in brand new territory even as HeroQuest veterans, because this particular quest utilizes the underside of the included board, the new map, the First Light Caverns map. The last couple pages of our quest book give us not 1, but 2 maps, with the classic permission granted to reproduce this document for personal use, as well as symbols for all of the components that you can use to decorate and design your own quests on either side of the HeroQuest board. That's an overview of our quest book. Before we delve into more literature, let's actually look at some of the components that come with this. We have, in our possession, presented to us first, is a brand new DM Zargon screen. Although this is not Zargon on the cover. The image here is actually of Mentor, who is similarly portrayed on the 2021 edition screen. The older screen is quite a bit wider. The new screen fits in the 10 by 10 box. 10 3/8. It's still the HeroQuest standard. However, when you completely unfold them, they actually end up being the exact same size. The reason for that is that the wing portions are wider on the new screen. The screens have the exact same information on them, so the new version of the screen really just presents the information in a more condensed manner. Instead of our monster table being so large, it just takes up the right wing. The points are actually expanded on what to do when a monster attacks a hero versus when a hero attacks a monster. While I'm going to always prefer the art on the old screen 100%, can't believe I just called that the old screen when we have a genuine old screen. The form factor and the back of the screen actually kind of win, in my opinion. It has the same table presence because it's the same size. And next up, we have the biggest difference between First Light and any other HeroQuest expansion or game system alike at all, the miniatures, which are completely absent and instead replaced by tiles and standees. HeroQuest classically set itself apart from other roll-to-move miniature-based dungeon crawling games, of which there were quite a few before and after HeroQuest, by having furniture, mini furniture, that upped the immersion factor of the gameplay immensely. To be able to place fireplaces, bookshelves, as well as doors on the board, and not just any door, but opened doors and closed doors. The board populated as you went through, and it remains this way to this day. However, we will be populating the board with tiles this time, instead of miniature furniture sculpts. The tiles are double-sided, and the artwork is the exact same on either side, except it is mirrored. So, interestingly enough, our alchemist's table here will have the balancing scales on the right of the hutch, and then when we flip this over, they're on the left of the hutch, and so on. All of the images are simply reversed. But I can guarantee you one thing, these tiles will take up the exact amount of tiles in their entirety once they are placed on the board. We won't have any free space around these at all. Pros and cons, the monsters will now not be crowded in a room where there are tiles, because they're just going to stand on the tile or be over it. There will be overhang. Whereas before, enough abominations in a room combined with the right types of furniture, and you were starting to see a lot of crowding happening. Now that's not going to happen in this game for two reasons. One, the furniture is tiles, and two, the monsters are now standees. You're not going to get that same overhang that you would. At least the art here for the monsters is the same official art that has been used in the app and on cards for the whole time that this game has been out. We have our lovely renditions of even the female versions of monsters. I love seeing the goblin girls here represented in the game system for once. Our orc ladies are here. Our skeleton ladies. Are you kidding me? Of course you wouldn't be able to tell, but we know. And curiously, we have rat tokens instead of miniature rats to place on the furniture or have scurry about the board. The classic HeroQuest rats had pegs in them so that you could insert them as decoration to the assortment of furniture that you had. They'd all had little holes in them in places, or at least some of them did, so that you could place things like alchemy bottles or rats. But now we have rat tiles, so you can essentially decorate your furniture with rats, any of the furniture, and with any number. There are also 4 rats, so if you wanted to, you could homebrew a spell wherein your heroes turn into rats. Next up, we have our sheet with the abominations, appropriately slightly larger than the other monsters, but you're still not going to see a lot of problems. These guys, by the way, they punch out easily. The board is thick, and we will have not quite slot bases, but definitely bases in which to insert these guys, and we'll do that here shortly. We have treasure chests, the throne, which now any monster I suppose can sit on, and our doors. We'll punch out a couple of these doors as well. I'm gonna say the open door is not gonna have the same presence for me as the classic opened door, where there simply is nothing here and it's a cutout of an arch. But the artwork used for the closed door is quite nice. I do like it. I don't mind doors represented in this way. And the artwork is mirrored here as well, making complete total sense. You know, door handle on the left when you look at it from the inside, door handle on the right when you look at it from the outside. However you want to interpret that, you can. Our next tile sheet feels quite different. It's threaded, or should I say linen textured. These are tiles that you'll be placing onto the board, as well as these skull tiles. Our mentor and Zargon tile. We have 2 different versions of stairs. We have our sewer grates. It's not a tile sheet that takes up the whole box. We've only scratched the surface of this. We're going to be pulling out the game board next, this epic new change in the world of HeroQuest. This is a unique game board because it is double-sided, and the underground side is only used, as of the time of this video, in First Light. We'll set that to the side for now and take a look at the rest of the presentation that the box provides. We have here an entire block of seemingly nothing. They actually had enough room in this box to put this and just not really have anything to occupy the space. But this tray, while you could certainly use it as a dice tray, it's flimsy cardboard as it is, it's really just a separator for all of your standees to go into once you've unpunched all of them. You also have another separated tray here with the dragon scale motif that carries your cards and your bases. Now, we'll go ahead and insert our standee onto the base, and it slides in deliciously. Don't care for my adjectives? Well, I don't care for you. Get away from here. I see no reason why you shouldn't be able to toss all of your assembled standee miniatures into the trays, and if for some reason they don't fit, you would be able to utilize the second tray to get your remainders. Perhaps all of your doors could be in here, all of your creatures could go into here. Slide our doors in now, and yeah, they are very well balanced. They're not going to fall over accidentally with a shake of the table or anything like that. It almost seems like we're returning to a simpler time, a time when doors were made of cardboard and they were slid onto bases, just like the classic HeroQuest game. But these bases are clear, so you get to see a little bit more of the board floor underneath the monsters, which provides you with a little bit of immersion. That's one of the pros. Clear bases, although that immersion is deftly knocked out once you place one of these on the board. I'm sorry, but I would probably have to take a Cricut machine or something and cut out these things to get the arches to be see-through. Not really complaining, just something about my preference, really. Okay, we'll put those back in. I want to say these cards feel very, very lightweight for the number of them that there are. If I'm doing a comparison with a different edition's card, they do seem to be the same thickness, the same linen finish, same texture. I don't know, it might be my imagination then, but they do seem like they're more lightweight. By the way, there's no visual difference whatsoever other than a slight swap in coloration between the 2021 character sheets and the First Light character sheets. These are all the cards that come with the game. All of them. We have our 4 hero cards unchanged from the 2021 base game, continuing to detail this unchanging, never-wavering standard of the 2 red dice for movement. A comparison between the First Light Dwarf and the 2021 Mythic Dwarf. We have a change in the starting weapon. The dwarf now starts with a hand axe. There are no other changes to the stats or the artwork or the front of the card in any way. There is a change to the descriptions of the heroes. Hardy and skilled, you have the ability to disarm traps without the use of a toolkit. To do so, roll a combat die. If you roll a black shield, you fail. On any other roll, you succeed. Versus the old description, you are the dwarf. Lowercase d, you are a good warrior and have the unique ability to disarm traps without a toolkit. To do so, you must avoid rolling a black shield on a combat die. A little bit more clarification on the newer card, which I like, and a little bit more flavor by saying hardy and skilled. I was going to point out how hardy was not capitalized, but there is a comma after dwarf, just like there's a comma after all of these. You are the barbarian, a powerful warrior who boldly charges into the fray. Be cautious, your great physical strength is no defense against magic. Versus the old description, you are the barbarian, the greatest warrior of all, but beware of magic, for your sword is no defense against it. So it really just took the time and effort to update the character descriptions. You are the elf, a wielder of blade and magic alike. You must employ both to triumph against evil. You have mastered the spells within one element. And you are the wizard, a learned and clever spellcaster. You face evil with arcane prowess and have mastered the spells within 3 elements. Because you cannot wear most weapons or use large weapons, you are vulnerable to physical combat. Looks like my card was battle damage from its tape job. A shame. This is the equipment card for the toolkit. We have our 4 reference cards. We have all of our equipment cards intact here for the battle axe, the bracers, the broadsword, chainmail, crossbow, dagger, hand axe, helmets, holy water, longsword, plate mail, potion of speed, shield, shortsword, and staff. I feel like we have a few more of some of these types in this edition, and I like that. It's not necessary to have all of the cards in order to have that piece of equipment, but it's nice to have the extra cards that players have more reference with their character, a little more customization at their fingertips. All right, we have our monster deck. These are pretty much the exact same as they've always been. The difference here is that we now have a card for the dragon, which has 10 movement squares, 5 attack dice, 5 defend dice, 7 body points, and 6 mind points. The dragon uses draconic flight and may cast Ball of Flame at will. That means every turn for unlimited turns until it's dead, or until all the heroes are dead. And then I suppose it could continue casting it. Seems like a very strong enemy, but as the quest book said, a lot of quests it will start with reduced body points because Qwindrak has not mastered yet the synchro form of the dragon. Artworks remain largely unchanged between the new edition and the second newest edition, but it looks like Abvalon Hill did take the opportunity to update the wording on all of the cards, possibly to prevent future conflicts in interpretation. They did add more flavor as well, which I always appreciate. The old edition of Summon Undead, for example, reads, this spell conjures up a group of undead to surround and protect the spellcaster. Roll 1 red die, and then goes on to give you the table for what happens when you roll that die. The new wordage reads, this spell conjures up a group of undead that surround and protect the caster. Roll 1 movement die to determine the undying servants that rise. Other than that, all of our dread spells are here, all 12 of them. All of our artifacts are here, the classic Spirit Blade, Orc's Bane, the Elixir of Life, Boren's Armor, the Ring of Return, the Spell Ring, the Talisman of Lore, as well as the Phantom Blade and Fortune's Longsword. The Phantom Blade, a chill runs down your spine as you grasp the blade. While wielding this weapon, roll 1 attack die. Once per quest, you may use this blade's power while attacking to render your target unable to roll defend dice. The blade passes through their physical form and slashes the soul. And Fortune's Longsword. Fortune favors the brave. While wielding this weapon, roll 3 attack dice. This blade enables you to attack diagonally. Once per quest, you may use its power to reroll 1 attack die. This one may not be used by the wizard, but no such restriction exists on the Phantom Blade. We have our elemental decks, the water spells, the fire spells, the earth spells, and the air spells. Again, artwork remaining the same, but Slight changes to the text. The new Ball of Flame reads, this spell may be cast on any one monster in your line of sight to enshroud them in flames that deal 2 body points of damage. The target rolls 2 movement dice. For each roll result of 5 or 6, the damage is reduced by 1. This spell may be cast once per quest. The mechanics exactly the same, just a slight rewording. The First Light treasure deck includes 6 wandering monsters, 4 hazards, and 14 legitimate treasures. 10 bad things out of 24 things. Alright, we've covered all of the cards and they'll fit back in the box without any issues, perhaps if we make 2 separate stacks. It's time to look at the dice. Call me crazy, but the First Light dice are actually a bit of an off-white, a bit of a bone color compared to the 2021 edition's dice, and I actually prefer this off-white color. I think the camera will be able to show you the difference quite clearly, and it is not a huge difference, but my particular dice set also seems pretty clearly readable. I know that this is a point of contention for some folks who unfortunately might get a copy that have, differences in the depth of the engraving or just during the manufacturing process. Not everything was 100%. There were reports of people who received their dragon, but the dragon didn't have a face. Everything else was there. So it looks like manufacturing problems, even if they are few and far between, unfortunately still exist, as they do with every game. I don't mind the white dice with red pips, but I really wish they had gone back to the red dice with gold pips. That would have been such an awesome, excellent callback, and it's just an opportunity that's missed time and time again. There's not a lot that I'm going to take out of this box and put with my collection of stuff to have at the ready, because so much of it is repeat or it's standees, and I've got the miniatures version, so I won't need them, but I will definitely be taking out these combat dice and using them. And hey, if you have multiple heroes at your table and you don't yet have another color of dice, multiple heroes, if you have multiple heroes at your table that like to use their own colored dice, for whatever color that may be, and you have a hero who has yet to receive their own special color, then you can give them this super contrasted white and black, or you can give them this off-white ebony and black, ebony, ivory and black. It's getting time to hit the coffee. We have 2 more things to look at, technically 6 more things, and one of those 2 things is the 4 heroes. We're going to give you the up-close and personal look for each one of these magnificent heroes. This is the elf, a female in the newer editions. She has a lovely cloak that enshrouds her, and she is ready to attack with her sword. This elf is just a little bit less heroic looking than the 2021 edition elf, which stands ready to do battle, ready to charge, or perhaps even lead a charge into battle, and has her hand outstretched as if ready to cast a spell. There is an ever so slight difference in the red plastic used to create the different sculpts. It's not really going to be a big deal because you probably have a lot of newer hero sculpts that are in the more bright red plastic. I actually really like this interpretation of the wizard. There is magic in his hand. You can say that this is fire, or you can color it whatever you'd like if you're a painter. It is not the classic HeroQuest wizard, but a definite reimagining of what that wizard should be. He still has his moon staff, but a shorter cape, along with a cleric robe. The differences in wizards are minor, but stark. The new wizard has facial hair and a shorter cut, while the old wizard sports longer hair, a headpiece, a tunic, and a longer flowing cape. Preference will be down to your personal taste. Next up, we have the Barbarian. We don't have a lot of changes here. Just kidding, almost the entire concept of the Barbarian is changed. Although, if you asked me, and I'd never seen this before, which Barbarian was the newer edition one, I would have said the one on the right. We seem to have a slightly less muscular character here, with armbands that don't match, a straighter fur covering his lower half, a sword that's just as huge as always, a base that isn't textured, and a very condescending point, a challenge to a monster, or perhaps a confident choice in the way forward. I definitely prefer the older Barbarian, who stands ready to strike, is in a guarded pose, and one of the very few miniatures that Abvalon Hill put on a base that wasn't just normal, but rather actually has some built-in flavor. Both of these muscleheads sport long hair. The new Barbarian has shoes. The old Barbarian, well, he wore some kind of sandals, but you could see his little toesies. Tickle tickle, Conan. Alright, it's time for the true HeroQuest players to come out. They say that there's no true Scotsman, but The fact of the matter is there's no true dwarfsman. The best hero in all of HeroQuest, everything, is the dwarf. This is objectively fact, and there's nothing that anybody can do about it, not even the dwarf himself. Our new dwarf comes equipped with a shield depicting the same draconic motif as on both versions of the First Light artwork, the cancelled as well as the approved, changed artwork, and a much smaller axe. Well, that's fine. It's the hand axe that the dwarf starts with in this version of the game, after all. The dwarf is sporting similar footwear to his older counterpart, but instead of long flowing locks ready for battle, the new dwarf is kind of, well, he's posed in a classical way, but his hair is just kind of there. And the style, while interesting and certainly befitting of a dwarf, just doesn't seem as fluid and dynamic and action-oriented as the old dwarf. So for axe presence alone, as well as facial hair, I have to give this to the old dwarf. I don't think it's much of a contest, but I do like the new dwarf. So out of all of the heroes, I think that Abvalon Hill took the opportunity to really update the wizard, but all of the rest of them I don't really see as an improvement. You'll have to tell me what you think in the comments below, but that's enough of that. We're going to move on to the next item of interest, and that's this big freaking dragon. This guy takes up 2 tiles, and he does have a menacing presence, although then again, not. This dragon's sculpt has been dunked on by so many players, new and old. I say it has one purpose, and that is to posit the game as something enjoyable for the youth, for the kids. It doesn't have that classic 80s or 90s Saturday morning cartoon aesthetic. No, rather, this kind of calls back to the 2000s, the mid-aughts of Saturday morning cartoons. This is a Ben 10 dragon. The plastic, by the way, on this guy, and this is likely due to the material that they used in order to get this sort of specific sheen, this metallic look for him. It feels different than normal HeroQuest plastic, and it also feels different than the distinctly different green plastic they used for the Jungles of Delthrak miniatures, but it's fine. It's more bendy than anything. It's not going to snap apart or break. This can fall on your floor or be thrown across the room and be just fine, much to the chagrin of players who don't like its design and are trying to throw it against the wall across the room to break it. There's just something about this sort of kaiju design that takes us out of the realm of Western medieval fantasy in which HeroQuest seems to be rooted, or at least associated with by many of its fans. It takes us into a more contemporary version of what fantasy may be now, or perhaps should be, with the times being what they are and the timelines ceasing to converge as we become aware of the multiverse and the Mandela effect. What am I even talking about? You're back up there, and that's because we're going to take a really quick look at the First Light rulebook before we finally take a look at the board. And the rulebook received an enormous update in pretty much every single way, except for, of course, how the game is played. This is the same HeroQuest that you know and love, but instead of the old forward, we have an entire new forward. It tells the same story of Rogar the Barbarian, who was joined by 3 other heroes to take down the forces of Zargon, flying the Dread Banner. The old rulebook is familiar and is formatted in a way that is very similar to the classic 80s/90s game. The new rulebook, however, blocks things out in a very handy, color-coded manner that draws the eye wherever it needs to go to get the information as quickly as possible and absorb it. We have a note here about furniture in the line of sight, which the classical example of line of sight is used, and it's a perfect example. I see no reason why it should ever be updated anyway. But in the original HeroQuest, furniture was used for atmosphere. It didn't obstruct movement or line of sight. Zargon, if you and your table want a more strategic game experience, you can treat furniture as though it blocks line of sight and cannot be moved through. I remember the days when I would place my heroes on top of alchemist tables and bookshelves. You can't get me now, monsters. Oh wait, they could. Our notes for running out of monsters, ending the quest successfully, unfinished quests, lost artifacts, and trips to armories, as well as selling excess items, are here near the back of the book, followed by a complete component reference and a cool image, which contains what looks like the original 4 heroes conjured into the flames coming out of Lortome. Hello, Talor. Hello, Rogar. Hello. Oh, the image just stops. Something else I think is pretty handy about this book is that it comes with a little flip-out section to give you a complete presentation of how your setup should look if you are a brand new player of the game. That said, no judgment to the old book. I thought it was fine. It's all fine. We're now going to look at this game board, and this is the part I probably was looking forward to the most. And I have thoughts about this, I have feedback, I have things to say. We're going to look at the now double-sided, now 6-sectioned HeroQuest board, and we're going to do so with the power of the ultra-wide lens. And here it is, the brand new HeroQuest quest board. It has the exact same layout and configuration as every other HeroQuest game system quest board that you've seen, at least on this side. And the boot tile has returned. All hail the boot tile. The quest board itself is almost the exact same size to the inch as the 2021 edition. If you compare the two board sizes, however, you will notice that the First Light board is slightly smaller, and that could be attributed to the fact that the logo nonsense on one side is taking up a little bit less room, but it's actually because the tiles are slightly different sized now. If you do your best to line up tiles on one side of the board and then draw your eye across the entirety of the board, you'll see that there's about, well, a little more than a half tile's worth of drift as the boards continue to go on. So the difference is only about a 32nd of an inch. And the difference in board sizes, it's not enough to write home about. It's maybe 1 full centimeter lengthwise and less than that widthwise. Now the 2021 board is a quad fold, meaning you'll fold it 2 times to close it, while the Classic Edition board is just a bifold board, meaning you've only got 1 crease right down the center for your old board, but you've got 2 creases crisscrossing in your new board. For this First Light board, you're actually going to have 3 of these lines going across your board in different ways. You'll point out fairly quickly that there are bright colors used in this version of the game. Whoops, those are the old heroes, these are the new. Bright, poppy, snappy colors to introduce these fun quests for all ages. Your 3D miniatures are going to be facing off against 2D standees. It's just the way this game is going to go. If you want to play the new quests, especially on the new board, you can do so, and you'll have miniatures that you can of course use from your old game system or your existing expansions. Whether or not you want to switch over to 2-dimensional doors, that could be a matter of taste. It's not like the doors really matter a whole lot, and in Classic HeroQuest, all of your doors were these flat cardboard pieces shoved into bases, so I guess I'm here to say don't gatekeep, and do whatever feels right for you and your table. Experiment. Play a couple of games using each of these configurations and see what you like doing. There are some people who prefer standees. I'm just not one of them. Here's your miniature abomination versus your standee abomination. Yeah, one of them is going to have a much easier time not crowding the table, I suppose, but this to me just looks so much cooler. It is very iconic. It is more immersive. But again, this is a matter of accessibility. This is a matter of a game costing, I don't know, $40, $50. And who knows how much when it's on sale, versus the over $100 version of the game that simply just has miniatures, and that's kind of one of the only differences. Besides, it's now unique to the old game system quest book. I talked about the underside of the board, and this is what blew the most people's minds, the fact that we now had an underside to the board. And by the way, if you wanted to, and you could actually change up your quests as a matter of homebrew because of how this board folds. You can, if you'd like, switch the board over just one side, and now you have this fold, and the squares almost perfectly line up, and you can place things like doors to insinuate that your party is traveling between a crypt or catacombs setting or castle to an underworld setting or underground catacombs and crypts. It's all crypts. It's crypts all the way down. The thing I don't like about boards like this is I feel like I'm going to damage them when I fold them up and handle them. I feel like the risk of tearing is just increased so much more greatly versus a bifold or even a quad fold. And I'll take a bifold board any day, but I will definitely take a quad fold over this 6 sections. But I understand that's how it fits in the box. That's how they had to do it. This board, however, it's thin, it's wobbly. It's not a quality that I would call the best. That said, it's good enough and it's cheap enough, so it's really hard to complain about it. Our board artwork on the underground side is very clear. There's no ambiguity. You will see things baked into the board on both sides, such as seemingly oversized skeletons and components of them, and weapons such as this useless sword. You can safely ignore them. It's not like your players are going to be able to pick them up. This board presents us with all kinds of new opportunities for homebrew quests, things that we've been asking for decades, and asking for years in the case of the game just belonging to Abvalon Hill. We have torch lights here illuminating sections. This allows us to create all kinds of new quests with new dynamics, and there are 5 such quests that use this board in the First Light quest book. Now, having said that, this particular side of the board is going to come with one annoyance, one thing that's going to drive people, I think, a little bit nuts. Maybe 2 things. Let's go with the second thing that I just thought of, the minor thing. This is always going to have this underground rocky cave theme applied to it. It's baked in. You can, of course, pretend that it's whatever you want. A whole village full of houses, alleyways through a city, a sewer. That's completely up to you and your imagination, but the board artwork is working against your immersion for this. It's always going to be this underground theme. That is minor. The major thing is that because of the amount of increased corridors, so much more of the board by default is going to be accessible versus the top side of the board, where before you only had to place a few blockades to keep players from going into sections of the board that you needed them to explore by other means or railroad them through the board to get the full exploration done. You're going to need 2 to 3 times as many of these blockades to block your players down below in the underside because there are just so many twists and turns. One of the cool things about this board is that it seems to come with a sort of proxy of the arena tiles that come with Against the Ogre Horde. They aren't the same. These tiles have a different amount, or I should say these rooms have a different amount of tile in them than the Against the Ogre Horde tile setup. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter. You can definitely use the left and right sides for your arena gameplay, building your armies, and you can use the center for your actual combat. Nobody's really going to notice the additional row that's missing. The subtractable. Now, I'm not 100% how this folds back up until I try to fold it up one way, and then it's like, whoops, this is not good. I will say this quest board does allow us to do one thing that we haven't been able to do as HeroQuest players throughout the decades, and that's play a pretty legitimate version of Gravity Land. If you have an existing HeroQuest game system board, you don't even need anything special to prop this one up. It does so on its own because of its 6-fold nature. You can play a legitimate Gravity Land finally. I'm not going to make suggestions as to how you play Gravity Land, although I will say magnets will go a long way when playing this quest. I'm gonna get a bunch of comments now. What's Gravity Land? Link, please. How did you fold up? You arcane roadmap atlas. This really is a callback to the 90s. Okay, there we go. I finally figured it out. My goodness. Bane of my existence. As promised, we are going to read the SeerScale Lineage to absolve any confusion that players might have about when First Light takes place in the HeroQuest lore. For Zargon's eyes only, so this is going to contain spoilers, but I mean, everybody should know this. The quests in First Light take place at the same time as the quests in the 2021 HeroQuest game system. The SeerScale are an ancient line of dragons long since lost to oblivion. They were cursed with a powerful ability to see with startling clarity the fate of others, but could never divine their own future. SeerScale were hunted for their gift and bound to those who would use their power, and as the ages passed, they succumbed to their captors one by one until only Abvalon remained. When she at last passed, it was whispered that she left behind an egg. The egg of the SeerScale has been spoken of in legend for countless hundreds of years, but it has remained obscured, perhaps just a myth. That is until years ago, deep within the ancient halls of Twilvor, the warlock Qwindrak traveled to feed his ambitions. He came to the halls, seeking the art of ancient dwarven fire to fuel his dread spells, but soon uncovered a power without limit, the SeerScale egg. And so it was that Qwindrak began to master the art of the synchroform, a corrupting dread practice that allows the user to become one with another creature, adopting their form by siphoning their life force. With each new form, the creature's essence must be slowly absorbed. Depending on the creature being absorbed, it can take years to achieve. Qwindrak's feverish experiments soon reached the ears and eyes of Cassandra, the Witch Queen, who was delighted by his grotesque attempts for power. She and her followers mocked and derided him, going so far as to banish him from the ruins of Kalos. Qwindrak, though slighted by the insult, did not feel remorse over his exile, for he kept hidden in his possession the egg he coveted, its shell, deep as the midnight sky with pinpricks of glimmering light spotting its surface. It is said that those who gaze upon the egg are left with dread visions of the tragedies that will befall them. Qwindrak saw no such thing, only the anguish of his tormentors cast into the fires of Tuelvor and the helpless pleas of Cassandria. He clutches the egg to himself, murmuring that he has foreseen the day of reckoning. Years have passed as Qwindrak slowly worked in the depths of Tuelvor to absorb his most coveted form. Countless spells cast over the egg, absorbing its power little by little. Soon, he whispers, soon. The message from Mentor actually begins the exact same way, giving you the history of his relationship with Zargon, but then goes in to say, I come to you today, however, with news of the Witch Queen Cassandria. She has moved a number of her army into the plains of death from the ruins of Kalos. Lord Tome shows me they search for someone, one of their own, who seems to have defected. This rogue operative possesses a terrible and ancient artifact, though I cannot glean more than that. Prince Magnus has ordered Sir Ragnar, leader of the Knights of the Realm, to scout the plains of death and determine the whereabouts of Cassandria's forces. Ragnar has valuable insight into the nature of our enemy. He was recently rescued from imprisonment by one of Cassandria's orc warlords, the reprehensible Ulag. We need you, brave ones, to become the heroes of the realm. It is for this very purpose I have trained you, and I know that you are up to the task. Let us go to the war room so that I might introduce you to Sir Ragnar. And this posits the events of First Light with these different heroes than the ones that you are playing in the base game system, as happening between quests 2 and 3, or perhaps 3 and 4. At least that's where they start. And that, brave heroes, is a complete overview of HeroQuest First Light, the brand new game system available exclusively at Target, at least starting out. Everything goes back in the box fairly easily, and I think this is one of the few expansions / game systems / anything that I have where I can pretty much leave the contents of the box completely alone, except for, as I said before, the dragon, the card, and the board so that I may use its underside, as well as the First Light quest book. But as for the tiles and doors and everything else, bases, I'm not going to need them, and forgot about my dice. Gotta put my dice back here. My correct dice, Ash, the dice that actually come with the game, for now, before I get my storage solutions all figured out. Boy, that was weird. The dice manufacturing here, I accidentally put my old ones in here and they didn't fit without getting squished in there pretty bad. So that means that the new dice are actually, they're like 0.5 millimeter smaller than the old dice. That's entertaining. I truly thank you for your kind attention today, brave heroes. I hope that you'll tell me what you like and dislike about this release in the comments below, what you liked and disliked about this video, and what I might do to improve my presentations going forward. Until next time, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your journey, and I'll see you on the next exciting adventure. For now, goodbye, brave heroes, and onward.